Okay. Have you ever noticed this thing where, like, you can write in English, no problem, right? You can, like, type out these amazing emails, write blog posts, whatever it is you do.
Yeah.
But then when you try to actually speak,
Yeah.
it's like suddenly you've forgotten everything.
Totally.
Like, where did all those words go?
It's so weird where you're like, wait, I know this stuff, but.
Right, exactly. Like, I can explain this in writing, but why can't I say it out loud?
Yeah.
And it's so common. And today on the deep dive, we're going to kind of get into that.
Yeah.
Why does this happen? Why is there this disconnect?
Right.
And we're not looking at it as like, oh, you have a problem. It's more like, okay, this is a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
This is a thing that happens, so let's understand it and maybe even use it to our advantage, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got some cool stuff to look at today.
Yeah.
We've got some insights from Shivanja Gupta's YouTube channel. She's got some great stuff about this whole writing versus speaking thing. And
yeah, she's awesome.
She is. And we also dipped into the Beyond the Mic podcast, which also had a really interesting take on this.
Yeah, Jerry's got some good points in that one.
Yeah, so we're kind of pulling from both of those to try and understand this. And even more importantly, right?
Yeah.
Figure out, like, what can we do about this? Like, what are the techniques? What are the actual things people can try?
The actionable stuff, right?
Yes, exactly.
Not just theories.
It's not just like, oh, this is why it happens, but like, okay, so what do I do on Monday morning to make this better?
Right.
So to kick things off, let's just get to the heart of it. Why does writing in English, getting it down on paper or on a screen, often feel so much easier than actually having to say those words out loud?
Well, I think one of the first things to consider is just the whole concept of time,
Yeah.
Writing, by its very nature, is a slower process, right? You get to think about what you want to say.
Yeah.
You get to choose your words carefully, really build your sentences. You can go back and double check your grammar.
Oh, yeah. The editing.
The editing, exactly. Like when you're writing an email, you don't just fire it off.
Right. You don't just hit send right away.
No, you draft it, you read it over. You might even change some words around until it sounds just right in your head.
Yeah.
And that's something that speaking just doesn't allow for, at least not in the same way. It's like writing has this built-in pause button that speaking just doesn't have.
Right. It's like you said, you have that time to really think it through and be like, wait, is that the best way to phrase that? Or did I use the right tense there?
Exactly.
And if you spot a mistake, no big deal. You just delete it and it's gone. Like it never happened. You can rewrite entire sections if you need to. It's so forgiving.
Totally. And I think that's where the contrast with speaking becomes really apparent.
Yeah.
Because with speaking, it's all happening in real time.
Right.
You've got to formulate your thoughts and get those words out there pretty quickly. There's not that luxury of going back and tweaking things.
Yeah, it's like you're on the spot.
Exactly. And that pressure to be spontaneous, to keep up with the flow of conversation, can definitely make fluency feel like this elusive thing,
Yeah, I can see how that would be really hard for people who are actually strong writers because they're used to having that time.
Right.
They craft their message to refine it. And then suddenly when that's taken away and you have to be quick and think on your feet, it's like a whole different skill set almost.
Absolutely. It's like trying to write a detailed essay, but the paper keeps moving beneath your pen.
I love that analogy. That's perfect.
And then there's the whole issue of errors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is closely tied to what we were just talking about.
Okay, yeah, errors.
Writing, like we said, it gives you that safety net, that chance to go back and fix things before anyone else sees them. So if you make a little grammatical mistake or you choose a word that's not quite perfect, you can just go in and edit it.
And nobody's the wiser.
Exactly. Think about writing a report for work or filling out an application for something important.
You proofread it like 100 times.
Exactly. You want it to be perfect.
Right.
And that process of refining your writing, polishing it up before you share it, it contributes to that feeling that, okay, my written English is pretty good.
You feel confident about it?
Yeah, you feel confident. You feel like you have a good grasp of the language.
Yeah.
But then when you switch over to speaking,
it's a whole different story.
It is. Because when you speak, those errors, they're immediately out there.
Right. You can't take them back.
You can't take them back. Exactly. Even if you realize you made a mistake and you try to rephrase it, that initial error, it's already been spoken. People have heard it.
And it can feel really embarrassing sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for learners who are maybe already a little self-conscious about their speaking skills. It's like every little slip-up gets magnified.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of being put on the spot, but even more so.
Yeah, and you can't just hit the delete key.
No delete key in real life, unfortunately.
Nope. And this actually connects to another big difference between writing and speaking, which is the whole individual versus social aspect of it,
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Writing, a lot of the time, it's a solitary activity, right? You're sitting by yourself, you're in your own little bubble, working through your thoughts and getting them down on paper or on a screen. There's a sense of control there, a sense of privacy.
Yeah, you're in your own comfort zone.
Exactly. You can take your time. You don't have to worry about what other people are thinking. You can really focus on just getting those ideas down.
And you can organize your thoughts the way you want. You can make sure everything flows logically.
Right. You're in charge of the whole process.
But then you think about speaking, and it's like you said, it's inherently social, right?
It is. The minute you open your mouth to say something, you're engaging with someone else, there's an audience, even if it's just one other person.
Yeah.
And that social element, it brings in a whole bunch of other factors,
Like what?
nerves, the fear of being judged, the pressure to keep the conversation going smoothly, to be interesting.
Yeah, the stakes are higher.
They are.
Yeah.
And all of that can really mess with your fluency, even if you actually have a decent grasp of the language.
So you might know the grammar, you might have the vocabulary, but you still freeze up because of that social pressure.
Exactly. And one of the things that Shivangi Gupta mentioned that I thought was really insightful is that speaking is the most frequent form of communication.
Oh, that's true.
So the fact that it might feel harder, it gets amplified because we're doing it all the time.
Right. It's not like writing an essay, which you might do once a week or something. We're talking to people constantly.
Exactly. So if speaking already feels a little shaky, that constant exposure can make it feel even more challenging.
I see. So it's like this cycle almost where the more we avoid speaking because it feels difficult, the harder it becomes because we're not getting the practice.
Right. It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's a good way to put it. Now, there's another factor that both Shivangi Gupta and the Beyond the Mic podcast talked about, and that's the difference in exposure.
Right. The difference between how much we actually practice writing versus how much we practice speaking.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people who learn English, especially in more academic settings, they've had way more experience with the written form.
Oh, for sure. Think about all those essays, all those reports, all those grammar exercises.
Years and years of writing practice.
Right. And all of that builds up this strong foundation in terms of vocabulary, grammar, sentence structure, all of that.
So you might feel really good about your ability to express yourself in writing, but then when it comes to actually speaking,
Like a different story.
a different story. And Shivangi Gupta mentioned something interesting. She said it's not unusual for someone to perceive their writing level as being quite high, like maybe a B2 or a C1 on the CEFR scale. But then their spoken English feels more like an A2.
Yeah, that's super common.
And that gap, it often comes down to that difference in how much they've practiced each skill.
Exactly. If you haven't had as many opportunities to actually speak English in real life situations, it's going to take some time and effort to get that fluency up to the same levels of writing.
Right, it makes sense. But the good news is we can actually use that strength in writing
Yes.
to help us improve our speaking, right?
Absolutely. That's where it gets really interesting. It's like instead of looking at it as this deficit, we can turn it into a tool.
I like that, yeah.
You've already put in the work to build up the solid foundation in writing. So now it's about finding ways to transfer those skills over to the spoken form.
Okay, so let's get practical here. Let's talk about some of those techniques.
All right, let's do it.
So both Shivangi Gupta and Jerry from the Beyond the Mic podcast, they both talk about the benefits of reading aloud. And it seems like such a simple thing.
Right. But it's really powerful.
It is. So what's the magic behind it?
Well, I think one of the key things is that it creates this direct link between the written word, which you're already comfortable with, and the physical act of speaking.
Oh, I see.
So you're basically training your mouth and your vocal cords to produce those English sounds in a more controlled environment.
So instead of trying to come up with the words and speak them at the same time, you're just focusing on the pronunciation.
Exactly. And Jerry even suggests reading your own writing aloud.
Right.
Emails you've written, text messages, even your grocery list.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And he even says to put some personality into it. Read your grocery list with dramatic flair.
I love that.
It makes it more fun and engaging, and it helps you to loosen up a bit when you speak.
And it's like you said, it's training those muscles. It's getting your mouth used to forming those English words and phrases.
Exactly. And Shivangi Gupta mentions a technique that she calls WRR, write, read, repeat.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that, but she didn't go into too much detail about it.
Right, but the emphasis on reading and repetition definitely aligns with what Jerry's saying about reading aloud. It's all about getting comfortable with vocalizing English, making it a more natural and automatic process.
Okay, that makes sense. So, building on that connection between written and spoken English, what are some other techniques we can try?
Well, Jerry also talks about the idea of scripting short, simple conversations.
What does he mean by that?
So think about everyday situations where you might need to speak English, ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, making small talk with someone you've just met.
Those everyday interactions.
Right. And he suggests that you actually write out some basic dialogues for these situations. Like you're writing a script for a play.
Oh, so you're not just practicing random sentences, you're actually thinking about specific contexts.
Exactly. And then you can practice saying those dialogues out loud, maybe even record yourself and listen back to see how you sound.
That's a really smart way to prepare for those real-life conversations.
It is. It helps you to build up a kind of muscle memory for those common interactions. So you're not just fumbling for words when you're in the moment.
Yeah, like having a cheat sheet in your back pocket.
Exactly. And another really practical tip that Jerry mentions is what he calls the pause and replace technique.
Pause and replace. Okay, what's that?
So let's say you're speaking and you find yourself struggling to articulate a particular word or phrase. It's on the tip of your tongue, but you just can't get it out.
We've all been there.
Oh, yeah. And what he suggests is that instead of getting flustered and trying to force it, just pause for a moment, take a breath, and think of a simpler way to say the same thing.
So like using a synonym or a simpler phrase?
Exactly. It might not be the most sophisticated way to say it, but the point is to keep the conversation flowing, to avoid getting stuck and losing your momentum.
That's so important because I think a lot of times people get hung up on trying to use perfect grammar or big fancy words.
Right, and it ends up backfiring because they get so focused on finding the right word that they lose their train of thought.
Yeah, you freeze up and the whole conversation stumbles.
Exactly. So this pause and replace technique, it's all about being kind to yourself, allowing yourself to simplify things when you need to, and just keep the communication going.
It's like giving yourself permission to not be perfect.
Exactly. Which is so important because nobody's perfect, especially when we're speaking a language that's not our native tongue.
Right, we're all going to make mistakes. That's part of the learning process.
Absolutely. And another thing that I found really interesting is the idea of using text-to-speech platforms like Discord or Clubhouse to practice speaking.
Oh, okay. How does that work?
So these platforms, they often have online communities where people can interact through text-based chat.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Right, so you can start by participating in those chats, typing out your messages and getting comfortable with the community.
And using your writing skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then as you start to feel more comfortable, you can gradually transition to joining voice chats, actually speaking with other people.
Well, that's smart. It's like a stepping stone.
It is. It allows you to ease into the spoken interaction without feeling like you're being thrown into the deep end.
And because you've already interacted with these people through text, you probably feel a little less intimidated.
Exactly. It takes away some of that social pressure and allows you to focus more on just speaking and practicing your fluency.
I like that. And speaking of taking away social pressure, Jerry also talks about the benefits of recording voice notes to yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
It sounds a little weird at first, but what's the logic behind that?
Well, the idea is that it creates this completely judgment-free space for you to practice speaking.
Because you're your own audience.
Exactly. You don't have to worry about making mistakes or sounding silly in front of other people. You can just let loose and experiment.
And it can help you get used to the sound of your own voice speaking English, which can be surprisingly helpful.
Yeah, a lot of people feel self-conscious about their accent or their pronunciation.
Oh, totally.
And recording yourself, it allows you to become more familiar with how you sound, to identify areas where you might want to focus on improvement.
And it's private, so you can make all the mistakes you want without feeling embarrassed.
Exactly. And both Shivangi Gupta and Jerry emphasize the importance of establishing a daily routine for speaking practice.
Okay, like what kind of routine?
Well, Jerry specifically suggests this three-step process. Write something simple, read it aloud repeatedly, and then try to say it from memory.
Oh, I like that. It's simple but effective.
It is. You're starting with something you're already good at, which is writing. Then you're actively practicing the pronunciation and the fluency, and then you're challenging yourself to recall it without looking at the text.
And doing that every day, even for a few minutes, can really make a difference over time.
Absolutely. It's like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Makes sense. Now, beyond just the mechanics of speaking, Jerry also talks about the importance of adding emotion and personality to your spoken English.
Oh, yes. This is so important. It's about bringing your spoken English to life, making it sound more natural and engaging.
Yeah, because sometimes when people are focusing so much on getting the grammar right, they end up sounding a bit robotic.
Right. It's like they're reading from a textbook.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we inject more personality into our speaking?
Well, Jerry talks about the importance of using your tone of voice, your intonation, even your body language to express yourself.
Oh, so it's not just about the words themselves, it's about how you deliver them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about how you speak in your native language. You probably use a lot of variation in your tone of voice.
Yeah, depending on what you're talking about, who you're talking to.
Right. And you probably use gestures and facial expressions naturally to emphasize certain points.
It's all part of communication.
It is. So try to bring those same elements into your spoken English. Don't be afraid to experiment, to be a little more expressive.
And I think that ties into what Jerry says about shifting your mindset away from striving for perfection.
Oh, that's huge. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles for a lot of learners, that fear of making mistakes.
It can be paralyzing, right?
Totally. But the thing is, even native English speakers make mistakes. They use filler words. They sometimes stumble over their words.
We all do it.
Exactly. So don't let that fear of not being perfect hold you back from speaking at all. The goal is to communicate effectively, to connect with the person you're talking to.
And sometimes making a mistake can actually make you more relatable. It shows that you're human.
Absolutely. And it can even lead to some funny moments, which can help to lighten the mood and make the conversation more enjoyable.
Right. It doesn't have to be this high pressure, super serious thing all the time.
Exactly. So embrace those imperfections. They're part of what makes you unique.
I love that. Now, for those of us who are maybe a bit short on time, Jerry also has some great tips for incorporating micro practices into our daily routines.
Oh, yeah, those are fantastic. There are little things you can do throughout the day to keep your speaking muscles active without having to set aside a huge chunk of time.
Give us some examples.
Sure. One of them is to describe what you're wearing while you're getting dressed in the morning. Just talk to yourself about your outfit.
I actually do that sometimes.
It's a great way to practice vocabulary related to clothing and colors.
And it gets you thinking in English first thing in the morning.
Exactly. Another one is to add voice captions to your social media posts instead of just writing text.
Oh, that's clever.
It's a fun way to practice speaking in a more casual context, and it also adds a personal touch to your posts.
People love hearing your voice.
They do. And another quick one is to use emojis in a text message and then explain what they mean in a voice note to a friend.
Oh, that's fun.
It's a lighthearted way to practice describing emotions and actions, and it's a good excuse to send a voice note to someone.
And speaking of resources, Jerry also mentions some helpful tools and websites for speaking practice.
Oh, yeah. He recommends Speechify, which is a text-to-speech app. So you can listen to written text being read aloud, which can be really helpful for pronunciation.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
And he also suggests checking out Reddit's r/WriteStreakin' subreddit, where you can participate in daily writing challenges and get feedback from other learners.
I love that idea. And you could even read your writing aloud to practice speaking.
Exactly. And then there are language exchange apps like Tandem or HelloTalk, where you can connect with other language learners from around the world and practice speaking with each other.
Oh, that's great for finding speaking partners.
It is. And a lot of these apps have features that allow you to record voice messages and get feedback on your pronunciation.
So you can really tailor the practice to your specific needs and goals.
Exactly. And finally, Jerry outlines this really cool 7-day Speak Up challenge, which is basically a step-by-step plan for gradually incorporating more speaking into your daily life.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So it starts with small things, like reading a message aloud before you send it, and then it gradually builds up to more challenging tasks, like making a phone call.
I like how it's structured and progressive. It doesn't feel overwhelming.
Exactly. It's about taking small steps and building your confidence over time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway we want our listeners to remember?
The most important thing is to remember that your ability to write well in English is a huge asset. It's a solid foundation that you can build on.
It's not a separate skill. It's all connected.
Exactly. And the goal isn't to overcome some kind of weakness. It's to unlock another way to use the English knowledge you already have.
To expand your skill set, to become a more well-rounded communicator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've already put in the effort to learn the grammar, the vocabulary, the sentence structures. So now it's about bridging that gap between writing and speaking.
It's about finding your voice.
Yes. And it's about shifting your mindset away from perfectionism and embracing the joy of communication.
Because at the end of the day, the goal is to connect with other people, to share your ideas, to express yourself authentically.
Exactly. And if you can write those amazing emails, those insightful blog posts, you already have the ability to do that verbally as well.
It's just a matter of practice and confidence.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to experiment, to try out different techniques, to put yourself out there and speak up because your voice deserves to be heard.
I love that. That's a great way to end it. So to our listeners, go out there and speak up. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being you. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.